Hello and welcome back to War Thunder and welcome aboard the D9 in the first battle and the D13 in the second battle. Both battles are in realistic mode, so yeah, expect some gameplay that you will like to see. The results are good, but not too good. They are not good enough to show them in their own battle, but what I want to tell you is basically a story. And before I make any judgment, because that's what I want to do today of those two planes, I want to tell you a little story of a TV series that I love to watch. And that is a series called Castle. And in this series, you have two main actors. Richard Castle, Nathan Fillion is the actor. It's a very good actor, by the way. And the detective Kate Beckett, played by the beautiful Stana Katic. Now, why do I tell you this? Well, there is something about this series, a story that it tells. Not between the main actor, but basically, Richard Castle is a novel writer, and Kate Beckett is detective within the NYPD, homicide detective. And they solve murders together. And while Kate Beckett, the detective, follows the evidence, tries to prove stuff, Richard Castle, the novel writer, sees the story behind the facts that basically Kate Beckett drags together. And what does this have to do with the Focke-Wulfs? Well, keep that in mind when I make my story about this plane. Now, the D series of the Focke-Wulfs were respected as one of the finest fighters of World War II. Together with the A series, they really made, the second fighter line within the German Air Force or the Luftwaffe. And the Bf 109, which is its counterpart, so to speak, as a fighter, it aged terrible, and the G series was a desperate attempt to keep up the Bf 109. The K4, together with the K14 that we probably will see in game sooner or later, were really just also G series, but a bit more modified. Basically, they were G series, and those planes are terrible on their own. But the D series is outstandingly bad. And I tell you why. And why it doesn't fit the results that we will not see just in this battle, but in the battles you play yourself. Now, it has to do basically, I can summarize it with that this plane is very limited in its capabilities, and it isn't at the same time, but it just feasts on the sheer incompetence of the enemies it faces. Now, if you agree or disagree is not important at the moment. What I want you to see is my perspective, and therefore we have to go into the arguments. Now, and also, there is a significant difference, in my opinion, between the D9 and the D13. The D13 is the German premium, while the D9 is the tech tree version, but at the same time is the most expensive Russian premium plane that they have. Quite a coincidence, isn't it? Because I prefer the D9 over the D13, not just for its lower battle rating, but overall it feels a bit more on point. Before we go on with the story that I want to tell you and what I have to say about the planes, I want to let you know that this is no plane review, but I will give you a lot of stuff in the video. And doing a tank review for me personally is relatively easy. I have the stats, I have numbers, I can compare the armor, the effectiveness, the gun. Tanks are more intuitive to me. I'm not a bad pilot, but I'm certainly not an expert. However, when something feels wrong, I know it. And I don't need to fly 3,000 battles in realistic battle and need to have a 10 to 1 kill to death ratio to judge a plane. No, if a plane is good or bad, shows itself for me after 20 battles, after 30 battles, that's enough to know it. And believe me, I've played those planes even more. Now, what I want you to look at in the battle is not just the gameplay, but also the radar, when I look at the map, when I look at the team list, and also at the kill feed. This is very important. Whenever you play a German plane, you have to look at the kill feed. Now here I'm trying to spray the P-51 a little bit with the 13mm, but it was not to be. Head on with the P-38 and so on. Now let's talk a little bit about the D9. The D9, the Focke-Wulf 190 D9, is a rank 4 German battle rating 5.7 fighter plane, which is equipped with two 20mm cannons with 500 rounds and two 13mm machine guns with 950 rounds. And it is the predecessor to the D12, which is in the same folder. That was a nice hit. And the stat card, turning times and top speed, that is a bit off from what the plane is truly capable of. It is practically the same plane as the D13 in its raw appearance and capabilities, with the main difference being the armament. Instead of two 20mm and two 13mm, the D13 is equipped with three 20mm with 750 rounds. So basically, the difference is not too big. However, the D9 has a 0.3 lower battle rating, which is really good. And, it doesn't face jets as often as the D13, which is very often accompanied by Hortons, Me-262s, and so on. However, the D9 feels a bit more on point. It feels a bit more maneuverable, and it's that bit more maneuverability that makes it so much better than the D13, in my opinion. Now, I made a video about the Focke-Wulf A series, or the A5 in particular, and I said that this plane hasn't seen any flight model changes. However, the D series has seen a flight model change, but it was not mentioned. And watch the dogfight with this A8. It's a German plane versus a German plane. Yeah, I've never had an easier fight than this. But back to the D series in general. I've flown the D13 and I've flown also the D9, as you can see here right on screen. The thing is this. When I last have flown them, they became a new, completely so-called realistic flight model. And what that meant is that the planes really behaved much more realistic. I will come to this back in a moment, but that meant that they had an extremely high compression at high speeds, and that was the absolute neckbreaker for me, because that was the only selling point for those planes, in my opinion. And I will talk a bit more about this in the D13 part. I hope you are not bored to this point, but I will work down a list that I've written together. Now here, I had a good battle so far, and not a lot of enemies are remaining. We see P-47 in front of me and also B-17. Now, there is one thing that you have to keep in mind when I tell you a little bit about the statistics, what I managed to do in both planes. I spaded the D9 in arcade, and I didn't like it too much back in the days, like every D series. I actually preferred the D13 and also the D12. However, when I flew it in realistic, the D9 was so much better than the D13 when I played it. But at that time it was already spaded, so it was at its maximum capabilities. And the statistics are the following. With the Focke-Wulf 190 D9, I have a win ratio of 58.3%. That's not too good. And I played 36 battles. I died 24 times, but I killed 93 opponents. So that's basically a 1 to 4 kill to death ratio, nearly. What about the D13? Oh boy. 76.4% win ratio. I died 88 times, but killed 242 opponents. That is a kill to death ratio of 2.75. Yet the D13 is one of the worst planes in my opinion at its battle rating, or overall at tier 4. And this is highly controversial when I say it like that. And this is where the facts and the story begin to deviate. But I think at this moment, let's have a quick look at the post-battle result screens. So, for 4 kills and 2 critical hits, I got 89,000 silver lions and 4,136 research points. I'm currently researching nothing, so that's all I get. And I think that's a good result, I was also first in team with 2,700 score points. I think that's it for the D9. And let's hop into some D13 matches, shall we? Welcome to Sicily aboard the Focke-Wulf 190 D13. And I think let's have a quick look at the stat card. And again, it's just about the battle rating and the armament. As you can see, 6.0 battle rating, just 0.3 higher than the D9. But we have 3 20mm MG151 with 750 rounds, as mentioned before. Now I think this battle shows, again, the good side of this plane, but also a little bit the bad sides. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of the D13, or let's put it in a story. The good armament of 3 guns, the good top speed, the very good diving speed. I managed to go over 850 kilometers without redlining, and I think it's capable of even going faster, together with the engine that takes a while to redline, and then it's very easy control, at least the battles I played today and yesterday. It doesn't have the oil overcooking issues that the A series currently have, with the A5 at least. But I think the problems are so much more overwhelming in the D13. And to a certain degree it also applies to the D9, but the impact on the D9 doesn't seem to be so neck-breaking as I feel it on the D13. Now, while the D13 had some overhauling in the instructor department and the flight model overall, it still is strangled by the instructor like no other aircraft. I will come back to this in a moment. It does have disastrous turning capabilities, both at low speeds, where it's the worst plane of them all, and it actually gets outturned by fighter bombers and heavy fighters and even some dedicated bombers. I managed to do it when I flew against D13s. But also at higher speeds. Now, again, the high speed compression seems to be gone, but still I don't have the maneuverability that I need. Overall, together with the instructor and the flight model, the plane wobbles at certain parts, and it's just preventing me from correcting like this slight aiming difference from where the target will be and where I manage to shoot. I know that the enemy will right past me here and there, but I can't get my guns in time, or when they are on there, they suddenly snap away by a few meters, letting the enemy live. And that happened to me so often that I can quite comfortably say that this is one annoying part of this plane. This plane is not just extremely nose heavy, but it also features nearly no elevator authority. That means I can't pull up, but I also can't flip over in a stall where the instructor really interferes. It's, as I mentioned, extremely wobbly. The engine doesn't respond as quickly to throttle changes as other fighters at this battle rating throughout all other nations. It also doesn't feature a very significantly good high altitude performance. In fact, I think over 7,000 meters it's quite inferior to many opponents that I meet. It doesn't get any air spawn in realistic battles except on Norway, where this plane really shines so much better, in my opinion. But I show you a battle here on Sicily. Now, this stands again in big contrast to the results. And when I say so much negativity about this plane, how can it come out in so many battles so good? Why did even I manage to have such a relatively good kill to death ratio or kill per battle ratio, which is okayish, I guess. And the answer is quite simple. It's the completely, massively incompetence of the enemy teams that you face. And I will come to this in a moment. Now, this plane gets easily outperformed by any other prop it faces, and even many chats will give this plane a big problematic environment where it should, perform a little bit better, in my opinion. It gets outclimbed by every plane it potentially can face with the designation of fighter, if the enemy tries. The 20mm shell velocity is by far the slowest amongst all nations, as far as I can tell, at that battle rating again. You have to give insane amounts of leads, together with the very restricted maneuverability. For me, it's so damn hard to get guns on targets. Watch this turn right here. That is very slow. By the way, we don't have any combat flaps anymore, and it seems like Gaijin took them away because clearly the D-series was way too maneuverable. Yeah. Then, defensive flying, something that I showed on my channel myself. It is possible, but it, again, just works against players that are not really good. A Spitfire pilot in a Griffin Spitfire, in any of them, will absolutely dominate. And while you're good at running away, at some point he will catch you. Yes, you can hide near your airfield, but this is not the way I want to fight. I want to get the kills. I want to be in a competitive aircraft that has something going for it. Now the roll rate is good, but then you have no, elevator authority. This makes defensive flying really difficult. So to this point I told you a lot of negative things about this plane, especially how it flies and so on. But when you look at certain stat cards of players that fly this plane a lot, you might say, look, they have good kill to death ratios or kill per battle ratios. And there we come to the point. Let's have a look at the opponents. And mostly you face allied teams, and they are mostly made up like 50-50 of American and British planes. And the Americans love their P-51s, they love also their bombers. And the bombers, as long as they are not 4 B-29s, can't decide the game. And P-51s very often just go ground striking. And that is the point. At the end of the day, the enemy makes this plane work, not you. The enemy making mistake after mistake, and at some point you get them. Enemies that just throw their planes with inferior armament compared to the D-13 into head-on against everything that looks like a German plane, while they are equipped with 20mm or even 30mm cannons, while German planes can do can take a bit more damage. Although if the D13 takes damage, it's basically out of the battle. Because when it can't roll anymore, it's done. But back to the enemies. When they have not the same amount as fighters, they mostly lose the fighter battle. When the bombers can kill their bases, they are just gun food. When the enemy misbehaves and just throws their, superior planes into head-ons, not rolling out of the way, not going into a turn fight, not going into energy fight, not outplaying you, but just throwing themselves into your gunfire. Of course the D13 comes off better. Of course you also, as a German player, you get trimmed to climb, you get trimmed to, fight together in teams, of hordes of fighters to look for enemies that sit on the tail of an allied fighter or another German plane, to be exact. Of course, that wins you the game. Because the enemy are making the mistake. Because they don't climb. Because they go ground striking. Because they throw themselves into head-ons. Because they give up. Because they don't have the will to fight. But the majority of players that fly Germans, they want to play fighters. And this is why every edition of a bomber for the Americans makes it even worse. The B-29 was just a bigger B-17, effectively. Over Norway, you have an air spawn with the D-13, and over Norway it performs better because you see the enemies coming, because you have more room to maneuver. You climb to intercept the bombers, you mostly come off better, and just watch how bad the maneuverability of the D-13 is. I can't even get guns on the B-29. At this point, I've said everything that there is to say for the bigger picture. And for you hammering your comments into the comment section, let me know your thoughts about this thought of mine. Let's face the Germans with the Japanese. Let's fight them. Because they are the only two nations that never face each other. Those two nations never face each other except in arcade or in realistic matches. And especially at tier 4. I think the Germans just simply have the inferior planes. The BF-109G series is not very good. The high A series is not that good. They are a bit derpy, but that's all. The D series can't take on any allied plane flown right, and in every 1 versus 1 it would lose. That's my message. Now, I gave you the reasons why we still have such good results in German planes, and yeah, I think at this moment let's have a look at the post-battle results for this battle. So for 4 kills and 3 critical hits, numerous other hits, I got 68,000 silver lines and 5,743 research points on a loss, which is not the worst result, to be honest. I was first in team with 2,891 score points. And just look at the enemy ground pounding. Now they just won because they destroyed our base, which was, unusual. The final verdict for this plane, or those German planes, are that they are highly entertaining to fly, the teams are very good and disciplined, and overall there is nothing too wrong. But in a 1 versus 1 situation, you will lose to any other plane flown by a competent pilot. Now, I think that's it for today, so thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Let me know in the comment section again what you think about this. Give this video a like if you did, subscribe if you want to see more, and see you in the skies of War Thunder.